Anyways, we were at the grocery store yesterday, and we went. And we got some beef, ground beef, 2 boxes of granola bars, handful of other things. $75. Okay, and Ginger and I are talking on the phone as I'm coming over to the studio today, and she says, she goes, don't buy any food because I'm making salad for lunch, and then we've got soup. For tonight, so we no excuse for not eating at home, right? And she goes, by the way, what did we buy for $75 last night at the grocery store? And I'm sitting there going, well, we bought this and that, and I had just spent $49 like an hour before you and I started talking, getting a handful of things: olive oil, a case of Publix spring water, Advil, and one other thing. In less than 24 hours, I spent over $100 on what I would call sort of, you know, not a full meal, you know?
And you didn't even put gas in your car. I would
No, I
add
did that
another
the day
50.
before.
Yeah.
And I'm like looking at it going, we spend so much on food that it's I think the one of the biggest items in our monthly bills. And I'm like sitting there going, how does anybody who doesn't make who makes an average household income and 4 people in the household, 2 kids and a husband and wife, how are they surviving? How can you not say there's a massive level of inflation? You
Well,
know?
you can go look at credit card debt and delinquency now. People are
Yeah.
using credit card to live on
But out of Washington, they'd say, no, 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 it's like, 4 or 5%. I'm
now. Well,
like, no, it isn't.
they live in a different world than we do. They live in a world, the politicians, the government, they get cars to drive around. They get travel on the government. They get to eat probably meals. They got their health club there that they don't pay for,
Yeah.
and they got all that. And so, and the people in the financial channels, they're all millionaires on their contracts, and they live. Inflation doesn't bother them. So what? Pizza going up or my meal went up. I'm making $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Okay, so until inflation gets high enough for them to feel it, then they think everything's fine. And what's wrong with all these other people? Because I don't feel it, and the government says, inflation's you know, only gone up 3% this month over month. And you're like, well, it's still 3%,
Right.
okay, month over month. And then just, since the prior administration came in, inflation's up almost 18% on just about everything in general.
Yeah.
So what that means is over the last 3 years, that out of every $100 you just spent, you lost $18 of purchasing power. Okay, so now you're down to $82. Okay, then on top of that, because we're printing so much money, we're in so much debt. We are raising our debt by $1 trillion every 3 months. Our debt is going up. That means that in every 4 months, we are raising the interest expense in our budget by $1 billion. Okay, and that's unsustainable. So what is that doing? Well, we're printing more money out of the Treasury Department. Well, how do we print more money? Through debt. Where's the debt coming from? Treasury bills, Treasury bonds that a lot of us are buying, and they have to pay up on that debt. They're
Right.
paying, 5.5% on a 30-day or 60-day bond bill, and the debt that's coming off the books that is expiring is at less than 1%, because the long-term debt was from 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago, when interest rates were zero. And so they have to pay up for people to go buy these treasuries. China, Japan are not buying our debt anymore, so it's relying on us and the banks, us retail traders. And so if they start lowering that yield, to be more in line with what you could probably make on some risk stocks or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, they're going to lose that ability to make that debt, which is funding the government, and the government is still overspending. We just had a bill, the the government just passed a spending bill for what, $1.4 trillion. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no spending cuts in there. It's all spending. Okay. So what does that do to you and me? It devalues the dollar. Well, a lot of people like Michael Saylor says we are devaluing our dollar by 10% a year. That's why he got into Bitcoin in his treasury. So if you add 10% on to the 17%, now you're at 27% of purchasing power you just lost. Okay. Then you haven't even paid your taxes yet. Okay. That's what people are feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I'm becoming, in the past, I've never really noticed it. And recently, in the last year or so, I've recognized how fast the cost of things have gone up. I think, about a year ago, we had the conversation about homeowners insurance and how my homeowners went up 2 grand a year. And you expressed, I think, something similar along with a couple other people in the platinum channel.
Mine almost doubled.
You're almost okay. I think one other person said something similar. He's down in Boca Raton, I think, or something like that. And that's one thing. At what point do you go? At what point? Where's the breaking point? Where does it move so far up the middle class into the upper class that all of a sudden they go, wait a second, yeah, I make, $50,000 a month or $100,000 a month. I am blowing through money, you know.
I don't,
Are we
I
gonna
think we
get
have,
to that point?
I think that, I think that the people and, what is the upper class anymore, depending on where you live,
Yeah.
making six figures in LA or New York is not being rich.
No.
Um, but if you're in the 1%, what have the 1% been doing during inflation and during the zero interest, 14 years of zero interest? Well, they've been borrowing at zero interest and buying assets with it.
Yeah.
Okay. At
Yeah.
zero interest. Okay. And that goes back to, again, kind of what we're seeing now in the crypto space, especially Bitcoin,
Hmm.
is with Michael Saylor taking his company, which he owns the big percentage of it. And he looked at the same thing in his balance sheet and said, okay, I got $500 million of wealth sitting in my balance sheet. What am I going to do with it? And he says, well, if I put it into treasuries and I'm getting 4% or 5% on treasuries, but inflation is like 10 or 12%, I'm losing money on that. And then he calculates out how many years it's really, he's just giving the money away and he has nothing.
Yeah.
And so that's where he said, how do I find a spot where I'm actually making money in the things that I see that I need to have, or something that's rare, okay, new, and is limited in its number, like a Picasso. He says, uh, why do people buy Picassos? Because they're rare. There's only one of them. There's a demand for it.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're seeing, is supply and demand. With the US dollar, the more we print, the more we devalue it. It's the same in stock market. If you and I buy a share of whatever, XYZ, or NVIDIA, let's say NVIDIA, it's a great stock
Yeah.
and accelerating. Let's say NVIDIA wants to expand and do something, so they offer an offering that doubles the amount of shares out there. You and I, as shareholders, have now just been devalued. Okay, our shares are not worth as much. Okay,
Yeah.
now the company gets all the money, but we're devalued, and that's what's happening in the US dollar. So where can we go? We put our money in the stock market. Stock market goes up 7% a year if inflation is at 17%, or and we're devaluing by 10%. What do we have to make? I mean, we're already down 27%. What do we have to make per year in the stock market to actually come out in the end looking good?
Yeah. I think, and that's the biggest challenge because the traditional way that people are taught to offset that is to invest in the stock market. Well, if you follow the Susie Ormans of the world or anybody else who says just buy an S&P 500 index fund and dollar cost average into it for the rest of your life, but if you factor in the buying power of that, it's not working. At one time it may have worked, but it's not working anymore. And I think that's
But it probably worked until 71 when we went off the gold standard and our money became fiat currency, which means, you know, our ability to accept it is how much I will accept your dollar as being worth a dollar. You
Yeah.
know, and you can see those charts that the dollar going down to just about nothing in value anymore. And, you know, what could a dollar buy when your dad was a young boy? You know, a
Yeah.
dollar was like being rich. Okay. Now a
Hmm.
dollar, you know, I remember in high school, I could go take 20 bucks out of an ATM and it'd last me all week. You know,
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
now I take out 100 bucks, it might last me that night, you know?
Right. Yeah. You're if you take out $100, you want to make it last, don't leave your home.
Exactly.
Don't buy a Apple movie, you know.
Yeah.
Just sit, don't move. Yeah. I think it's I think that's the misunderstanding. I think in over the last couple of weeks, we've talked a lot about on the Discord, on the Platinum channel about crypto and this, that, and the other. And I think people are slowly understanding more and more, but it's one of those things that I think, with the Bitcoin ETFs being approved, the 11, and then you got, I think, two more coming down the pipe here soon by Morgan Stanley and Wells Fargo. You know, these could be a help to offset that devaluation of the currency you're buying it with, which got me to thinking about, well, what other currencies in the world are not devaluing like this? You know,
There aren't.
there aren't any.
They're all devaluing.
They're all devaluing.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
look at Argentina, look at Zimbabwe. I mean, look at Lebanon, look at Turkey.
yeah,
Okay, look at the United States. The only reason we're not devaluing, or we are devaluing, but it's not hurting that much, is that we are the United States and we are the reserve currency of the world right now.
right. And the question is, how long can that last? You know,
Well, if you look at history, how long did it last for the Romans? How long did it last for the Greeks? How long did it last, for the Spanish? How long did it last for the British? You
right.
know,
And is the Bitcoin concept, is that the next revolution? Are we going to, I think that's where I'm believing more and more that the very wealthy, the one percenters of the world, have recognized this in a big way. And that's why you've seen the flip flop with, Blackstone and or BlackRock, and Larry Fink going from this is a and Jamie Dimon. I don't think Jamie Dimon's really said anything much about endorsing it, but you know, Larry Fink runs one of the biggest asset management firms in the entire world,
the largest. Yep.
the largest. And he basically has gone from this is a no-go to we're all into it now. This is a solution for retirement. Um, and I think it's because one, they want to make more money. They see it as an opportunity, and they got, and that's why you see the iBit, you know, their ETF. Just that's where the money's going. You know.
Well, and it's you and I. We've talked Bitcoin, and you're a Bitcoin miner, which is cool. And I again, I got kind of roped into it when I started watching Michael Saylor when he first got into it, and he explained it. And he always says, you know, people I meet who, when you start bringing up Bitcoin, if they don't know anything about it, they just kind of poo-poo you, and it's fantasy or whatever. He says, but the people I meet who put at least 100 hours of studying Bitcoin and what it is, they're all in. They're like, okay, I get it. He
Yeah.
says, and I've probably put in now well over 100 hours of watching videos and reading and all that. And I'm not the biggest understander of Bitcoin and the blockchain, but I do understand it enough to know that it's a technology that the internet was a technology that didn't get adopted right away,
Yeah.
and so the cell phone was something that people didn't think would ever go. Pagers, cell phones, all that stuff it took a while for adoption,
Yeah.
and now we're starting to see with what's happening, and the more I understand, Bitcoin's only been around for 15 years, and it's the number one asset as far as increasing valuation, I think, in those 15 years over stocks, over bonds, over real estate, over gold, over
Yeah.
silver. Okay. In fact, I think the market cap of Bitcoin just went over the market cap of silver worldwide
Yep.
now. Okay. So it's being adopted. It's being used. It's being used in Venezuela as those people's currencies being devalued by hundreds of percent, that they're moving it over into Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is not something that is deflationary, because it only has 21 million, okay, Bitcoins. And you
Right.
think about that, and that, I think each Bitcoin is 100 million Satoshis, which is the way it's like a cent of a dollar. Okay.
Right.
And so you don't need a full Bitcoin as a person to benefit from this. You just need some Satoshis. Okay.
Yeah.
Whether it's 10% of a Bitcoin, which is zero point 0.1, okay, that you can get right now for Bitcoin's at $68,000, would get you zero point 0.1 Bitcoin.
Oh, I didn't know
So,
that.
I mean, so what it is a store of value, and it's a store of value that is not deflationary. It isn't. They aren't going to print anymore. Okay, it's
Right.
not like the dollar. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's not going to devalue. Okay, and as Michael Saylor would say, it's either going to go to zero or it's going to go to a million, and I don't think it's going to zero. You know,
Yeah. Well, and there's so many other factors that are in favor of it going higher and that you don't have in, like, say, a Nvidia stock or super microcomputers or Palantir. And one of those is, one, you can't split it. You can't do a 2-for-1 split or 3-for-1 split. Um, and then you have this loss factor. And I got to thinking more and more about this. You pointed out a couple of weeks ago about, was it 7.8 million Bitcoin have been permanently lost. Now, there's a chance somebody may find their Bitcoin, but it's not going to budge that number. But that's going to continue to happen
right?
as people get careless or that kind of thing. And I think that's another factor that shrinks that supply and drives that price higher. I always laugh. I remember going to that 2022 Bitcoin conference and in Miami and hearing them talk about, a $500,000 or $500,000 to $1 million for a Bitcoin. And I was like, oh, no way, and I'm mining this stuff. And I'm like, no way. Today, because of this whole approval of ETFs, sure, supply demand. I mean, just
Well,
basic economics.
and the halving. We didn't even talk about the halving that's coming up in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
Okay.
less being produced.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was it? Is there, what, 2,169, or I think that's the number I saw that is left to be mined,
Yeah.
and it's supposed to
It's
take
less than
100
1.9
years.
million. Yeah,
Huh?
less than 1.9 million are left.
Yeah, and it's
And
going to
so
be
I
less.
think, and but you're a miner, so you know that you're going to go from 6.5 Bitcoins per block to 3.125,
Yeah,
or 6.25 to 3.125.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Um,
understand that. And I look at my daily production level, and I'm very small miner. That daily production level is going to get cut in half. Yet the demand is going up, so
right.
the value is going to go up. So that cut is actually going to probably be offset
Right.
in a sizable way. And that's why I look at I I'm very much I'm a sprinter. I ran the half mile in high school track. I ran the mile at the most. And I never really looked out. I don't look out that far because I know variables change things. This is one of those first ones that I've looked at and said, I'm gonna be 55 this year. In 10 years, where could this be? And is this the golden ticket? And based just on the numbers, it's like, wow, it really could be. And I think the thing I love about it most is no humans control it,
That's
you
true.
know?
Yeah, there's no company that runs it.
Yeah,
No one can change it without, it's decentralized. I mean, nobody can change it. Okay.
yeah,
And you can, and it's visible. If you're on the block, you can see who has what and where it's going. Okay.
yeah.
it's not like the black market. Everyone talks about, oh, it's shady, but it's not shady. It's all open ledger. You can see the ledger, okay, anytime you want.
Yeah.
Um, I explained, and I guess you know I obviously have some in my portfolio, and I know you do.
Yeah.
And I've talked to my friends about it, and it's a legitimate, since it went to the ETF, it's now legitimate. It's not going to go away. It's a legitimate asset class,
Yeah.
and I consider it as digital property, like Michael Saylor would, or a digital savings account almost
Yeah.
that goes up because I've got something like gold. Okay, gold is considered a digital, and not digital, but an actual property of value, a store of value that you can buy gold, except you have to store it. Okay, and gold is big and bulky, and you have to store it, and you can't move it very much,
Right.
but you can with Bitcoin. However, gold, if the price of gold goes up like it has, $3,000 an ounce, and I'm a gold miner, I know that I can make more money if I go dig more gold, and there's more gold to be dug. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's where your inflationary devaluation comes in, because as a Bitcoin miner, you can only dig until it's done, and you can't find any more Bitcoin after it's over.
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
so I try to explain it to my friends who are obviously elderly like me, and I go through the whole thing, and at the end, they're just like, I just don't get it. Why would I? Why would I put $7,000 into it? And get 10% of a Bitcoin. I
Yeah.
said, well, I said, if you understand it, and if you believe that our dollar is debasing and that you're losing purchasing power over time, and you believe in the law of, excuse me,
Yeah.
supply and demand, and you realize that the supply is limited at 21, you know, million Bitcoin, and that the demand is raising because we have now institutional buyers, and in fact, that doesn't even include probably RIAs who can't buy it for 90 days after an ETF comes out,
Right.
and if everybody now became in the institutional world and people with advisors, all of a sudden you put 1, 2, 5% of your portfolio into an ETF that has Bitcoin, that demand is going higher.
That's a
Okay, so
trillion
if the
dollars.
demand is going higher, and I'm just like, this is logical. We're sitting around having if the demand goes higher, okay, it's like going to the Super Bowl. There's only a certain amount of tickets, okay, and once those tickets are gone, they're gone, okay. And what
Yeah.
happens to the price of tickets? They start at $500 out of the gate. By the time they get to me and you, and we pass on, it's $20,000 a ticket. Okay,
Yeah.
it's the same concept. I said, so if you don't believe in that and you don't believe in all that, what is $7,000 to you to buy a tenth right now of a Bitcoin in the hopes that in 10 years, this whole supply and demand thing does make it go up? And let's say it gets up, to $1 million. Okay. You owe a tenth of that now. You own $700,000 or $100,000 off your $7,000 investment. Now,
Right.
that's pretty good return. I said, but your biggest regret, you would be in my friends. And I said, I have other friends who decided I'm gonna try a little bit of this and put it in my, not big portions. The only regret is that someday, if it does get to that point, based on the logic, and you can think, what is the risk and the reward on this? Okay,
Yeah.
the risk is $7,000 to zero. The reward is, if it's a million, $100,000. Okay, my regret for you is that me and a couple of our friends are sitting around going, crap, let's take a trip, or let's do this. And you're like, oh man, I wish I would have got into that. Why didn't you guys tell me that? Because you're going to feel worse about that than losing $7,000.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you think about that emotional gymnastics and apply that to stuff that you have done that with. You know, oh, I should have bought the house when they offered it to me at this price because I would have tripled my money.
Yeah.
I've had that on a real estate side of things. When I moved down here, I actually, it wouldn't be triple, it would be four times what what I would have bought it at. So I think this is a real easy one, and it doesn't take a lot to get in it, to get started. You know, um, and I mean, shoot, the value of Bitcoin's gone up what, $2,000 in the last 2 days. It went
Well,
down
just
and it's gone back
just
up.
in the last day, we're up $2,300. Okay,
Yeah. I
so we're at
mean,
68,000.
yeah,
I mean,
I
so
think,
if you own, I mean, if you own 1/10 of a Bitcoin, you're going to see that account, and it's going to be volatile.
yeah,
Okay, so again, Platinum Channel is always on Best of Us Investors. We talk about swing trading a lot, but we also talk about just wealth, and we talk about treasury bills and how that's safe money. Okay, and how do you buy them and why do you have them? We talk about diversification. We talk about, assets. What's an asset? It's a picture, it's a gold, it's an antique car, it's your house, it's things you own. Okay, and so
yeah,
this is just another asset we're talking about. Okay, that that could be a game changer in your future, and it won't take that much to be a part of it. Now, and this is not financial advice, but it's something that people should look into and do their own due diligence and get your 100 hours in, like I did and you did,
yeah,
and understand it. So the way I look at it, it's logical. Supply and demand, number one. Okay, it's never been hacked, so it's secure. Okay, it's decentralized, so you're not going to have a bunch of people come in and change it in the middle of the game. Raise your taxes on it. And it's like a guy I saw the other day, Caldone, and he sold his house in Florida. He has several properties. Took all the profits, put it into Bitcoin. He says, "Look, I'm going to make more because this house cost me maintenance, cost me taxes. It cost me. I had to put a new fence up. I have to cut the grass. That's $500 a month." He went through the whole thing. He says, "With Bitcoin as a digital property, I don't have to do any of that. You know,
no,
I just have to pay taxes if I sell it for a profit."
yeah,
And look at the value. He says that in Bitcoin for 15 years on history, and this doesn't say it's going to do it all the time, has increased by 30 to 40% on average every year. He says, my house is not going to do that. It may
no,
double or triple over 10, 20 years.
yeah. And
Yeah,
if you bought it, buy it, and you just hold it, you're not paying taxes on it.
right.
You're not paying a utility bill. You're not paying that kind of thing. I think about when Michael Saylor talks about the store of value. I'm like, what? Okay, so you don't want to put 100% of your money into Bitcoin, you know, probably a smart thing just because of the volatility of it. And we don't know the future of it, right?
No, you never do on anything.
Right. So what other stores of value are there out there and what people have used in the past? And I would say probably gold is one, real estate at some level, you know,
Art,
land, you know.
yep,
Um, it's not
art,
a lot. What's that?
yep. Art and rare coins.
Yeah. Stuff that you wouldn't, you wouldn't go, most people don't go and buy a painting, a one of a kind painting, and because they see it as a store of value. One, they don't have access to that level of paintings, but two, it's so foreign to them, and I think
Well,
more
let's
and
say you
more.
did do a painting. Let's say you did do a painting, and you got a Picasso, and it's worth X amount. That thing could be damaged, lost, stolen.
Right.
Okay, that's not secure. Uh, it can be burned up in your vault that the building catches fire.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you look at that compared to a digital property like a Bitcoin, you see the advantages of it.
Yeah. Well, and you can move it. It's
You can
hard
move
to
it.
it's hard to move
Well,
a
yeah.
Picasso.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you had to move because of some emergency or a tornado or something, it's going to be hard to throw your Picassos in the truck and get the heck out of there.
Right. Right. Chances are they're going to be spread all over Kansas.
Yep.